Hey everyone, welcome to my video on Throne and Liberty mistakes that I see newer players making still coming into the game. I split this video into parts like early game, mid game, and late game. There will be chapters for each. The early game for me is like everything before level 50 and leveling up to that. Mid game will probably be hitting 50 and going beyond, and late game will kind of be establishing more into your late game gear after 50. If you guys enjoyed the video or any of the content that I made, please consider dropping a like and leaving a comment down below letting me know your thoughts. And please hit the subscribe button. I am trying to get over 500 subscribers. Starting off in our early game, I think the biggest mistake a lot of new players make is not joining their guilds. I think around level 26 or in the 20s, around chapter 5, they start giving you quests to join all these other and join any kind of guild and just to do these quests. And the community aspect of this game is very important. It gives you a lot. For example, logging in an active guild that completes their guild contracts will reward the entire guild these guild coins, which you can later use only to purchase items from a guild merchant. Secondly, they have guild skills, and assuming that you're not level 50 yet, you would be able to get XP boosted. Anytime you're doing open world dungeons or farming Solent, the guild leader can do Solent bonus as well as an Abyss bonus if you want to increase your token efficiency. And overall, if you are planning to do any world bosses, the boss bonus damage and buffs of these nature, mana regen range, can help increase chances of getting boss drops. The other thing is the guild storage. Now, there are some guilds which might just have a lot of items like this when you join, and they're willing to help out new players, give them lucent or give them items they need in their final build. I guess something you can consider when joining a guild is what kind of settings they have. For example, the guild can choose to have any item go into the guild chest, even all the way up to uncommon values. And the same thing goes for these miscellaneous items, such as precious parchments and other things that might drop in the world. And usually a kind of standard setup is that epics would go in the guild and the miscellaneous that people keep. But you never know if you're going to be in a guild where the guild can theoretically take everything. And so the only downside of quickly joining a guild is just make sure they have some kind of loot distribution rules or some kind of community that you vibe with and you actually enjoy being there. Figure out what the loot distribution is like and what the system works like before you spend a lot of your time helping the guild. Another quick thing I want to mention real quick is guild raids. When you join a guild at around level 17 in the guild, you will unlock its maximum amount of boss kills, which is 7 each week. Resets that Thursday. And these boss kills each week are probably your best bet for getting some of these really hard to obtain pieces like the Adenis Greatsword or any of these world boss weapon drops, Talus Staff, Excavator Wand, Nirma Sword. And that's because only these bosses are the only way to obtain these weapons, and if you don't do them in the open world, in the actual world boss events, then guild raids is your only next choice. I want to tie this point in with the joining a guild point, and that is that people need to kind of stop playing the game solo. Almost all the content that you can run in this game, co-op dungeons, open world dungeons, it's all done through party systems. You can complete a lot of content a lot quicker if you have a squad. That's why it's always best to join a guild that hopefully has people that invite others to parties that they run content with and teach each other, especially when new dungeons drop. It takes a lot of patience to get some of these done, and it definitely benefits to have guild members in your party that won't get frustrated from your mistakes and are willing to teach. The next thing that I see lower levels doing is focusing too much on these low level contracts. So when you first start the game, they try to introduce you to these contracts, and you should do only what is needed to complete the quest and no more. Because as you level up, you will have different contract merchants that give different contracts. You can see this one's is level 12 to 16. And ideally, you want to wait until you can use at least a level 50 contract manager, because then you will get better rewards. For example, if you see the level 50 contract manager, it'll say 50 out of 50 on the top. They give more resources, and you can potentially get these ores. And you can choose these ores based on what you're kind of missing to upgrade in your growth stones. For example, the green emerald ores can be used to make the precious accessory growth stones. The yellow precious stalin ores can be made into precious armor growth stones, and the blue ones, respectively. The precious marin ores and the blue ones can be used to make skill books and their respective color. And red rubrics ore is made for weapons and everything weapon related and their respective things. Another thing I see a lot of low levels sleep on, and I guess a lot of people in general, are these dynamic events. They pop up as these green events on your map. Some of these can be pretty good. For example, I like to do the lantern seed. Recommended for level 20 to 23s. It can give you runes. You only have to get up to 500 receipts, and you can pretty much AFK for the rest of the event. And that is enough to even give you a chance at getting the lucky rewards to unlock 5 trait unlock stones just for doing that event. And I farmed a pretty good amount of these trait unlock stones just from coming to this event. And it only takes like 5 minutes of work and just running to these market carts. And you can pretty much AFK for the rest and still get really good rewards. When you've hit a plateau in your story mode questing and you need to get more levels, in addition to co-op dungeons, another thing I'd recommend is filling out your Codex. Come over here into the exploration tab. You will see they're kind of all like the side quests that are available in the realms, and they'll even explain to you what resources you can get. So if you're missing a few things, say like some precious armor growth stones here, maybe consider looking and doing this quest. And you can favorite each one. So you come over here into the favorites tab, and doing so will pretty much add it to your list on the side here. And that way you always have it up and you know which one you want to go do. And these are a pretty good side thing to do. I wanted to quickly touch up on expeditions. You can get into your expeditions on the bottom next to your HUD. Likewise on the top right corner next to your map. These are good to do passively, they just take time. They give you resources you can do for cooking or for late game grinding for your Archboss weapons. Some notable expeditions to do, maybe in Stoneguard when you reach level 11. Daybreak Shores gives you a chance at having a Kraken fishing rod. And my final point before making it off into the mid game is you should definitely consider if the build you're going to use is going to be in your final build, the 2 weapons. Masteries, they take a very long time late game to level up, and you use a lot of your resources leveling up your skills as well. So it would be wise to try to stick with one thing and throughout your entire account. It's just the way the game is. I know choosing the right weapons can be hard sometimes, so if you guys are interested, let me know in the comments below, and I will make a separate video on the kind of different playstyles certain classes use and what the metas are. So let me know if you guys are interested in seeing something like that. Welcome to what I would like to consider the mid game, I suppose, after you probably start reaching level 50 and you want to start looking what to do next. This is probably where you'd be. So you've just reached level 50 and you're probably really excited to start gearing up and getting into that gnarly purple gear. So let me give you a couple few things to mention that you should keep in mind when you are gearing up. The first thing to mention is weapons. Your top priority should always be maxing out your weapon traits first. Weapons are the most important to max out first because it's ultimately going to give you the most DPS output. In essence, you're going to be clearing dungeons faster, mobs, and everything, therefore earning you more lucent and just overall getting you through the game quicker. Weapons should always be first priority. Let me show you a common mistake I see a lot of new players make. So, websites like Maxroll and Questlog, they can honestly be your best friend when you're new to this stuff. So we'll use my build as an example, going to their build guides, checking for PvP because that's probably what you want. And most people will jump to the gear progression, or they'll see this on the front page and they'll instantly start thinking like, okay, this is my end game crossbow dagger build. I'm going to start building this as a level 50 now. And so they're going to start looking at all these pieces, and they're slowly going to start trickling them into all of their gear one by one. And that's wrong. Let me tell you why. What you actually want to be doing is you want to be going to the early game build because that's where you are right now. And you want to make sure that you have all this blue gear traded out. You see it has max traits here. And the reason you do this is because one, these blue pieces of gear are a lot cheaper to upgrade. And two, you can transfer your blue piece of gear into a purple piece of gear, and it will keep everything that you had on that last one, and it will give you blessing then to use on your purple ones. It will always be more cost efficient to start slowly going in. So the first main focus points is you want your weapons maxed out first, and then you can slowly start putting in these other small pieces that are easy to acquire, but you notice that the rest are blues. And slowly, as you start getting these other pieces, you would be putting them in one by one into your gear set to minimize the amount of lucent you're spending and maximize your grind. Let's talk about rare resources really quick. I just want to touch up on things like the trait unlock stones, maybe trait conversion stones. You should kind of look into using these more sparingly and only on important pieces of gear that you know you wouldn't otherwise be affording in the auction house, and you need to use the trait unlock stones. Archbosses are obviously a clear example of this, but those are extremely, extremely late game items. But that's why these are so rare and you have to kind of hold on to them. I definitely would until you know what you're doing with them. Now that you're at 50, you're probably going to be wondering about your inventory space and your storage. Your inventory space can only go up to 150 till it starts costing Solent, and next it starts costing Lucent. Once you max that out, it's a lot cheaper to upgrade and expand your actual storage. It's a lot cheaper Solent in the beginning, and now you see I'm at 185 and it's almost costing me 2 mil Solent, but it's still not costing me Lucent to upgrade this, so you should always prioritize upgrading your storage over your actual inventory. Next, let's talk about these open world dungeons. Each week from the Sundries Merchant, you can buy these contracts, and we're about to go over which contracts you should and shouldn't take when going through the dungeons. Starting with the Sulis Abyss. Typically don't want these abomination contracts. Right now, there's a bug with the Soul Brazier that doesn't let you get back up because of the barrier. And what you're typically looking for here is Demon Hoofs. And the next best one you could also take is collecting the Sealed Magic Tomb. So contracts like these are perfect to take for the Sulis Abyss, because you can do all this in one area and you don't ever have to leave. The next one we'll be looking at is Shadow Crypt. This one is a little more situational. Here is one that some people choose not to take, others do. You can kind of play around with the specters and see if you like those. But generally everything else here is fair game. Like you want the Mana Brazier, Watcher statue is good, and the rest are pretty standard. I believe the Berserk one just means it's a mini boss. That one will spawn in the middle of the map. The next one we'll look at is the Sanctum of Desire. The Altar of Darkness is a good one to grab. Umbromancer is a mini boss. And the one that you want to pretty much avoid is probably Junoboat's book, because that one requires you to solve a maze and go out of your way to go to a separate room to complete it. Lastly, we have Ceradoma Island. The Butcher is a mini boss here. And here you typically only want to avoid collecting the magic crystal flower. It requires you to go out of your way on the map to go get it, and you would ultimately just be leaving your farming spot. So here's a quick example of how you can run these things to get started. First, you can start with your contracts in Pure Light Tower. Do whatever contracts you need, respective to which ores or rewards you might need. I can also make a separate video on what contracts I choose to take to just get them done the quickest if you guys are interested in seeing that. Next, I would start doing the open world dungeons, the blue contracts that you buy weekly from the merchant. Just go ahead and start doing that, any of them, and use the advice I gave you before. You can also find groups either in your guild if you took the advice earlier, or in the find a party. Get used to kind of doing these things together with people. And lastly, you should be doing your co-op dungeons. When you're going to be at this mid-game, you're probably only going to be doing the 1-star dungeons, but make sure that you're always queuing random so that you get the random matchmaking reward chest. And you can also hide your weapons if you're newer, and to kind of prevent people from kicking you out of the dungeon from seeing you have bad gear on. Welcome to the more late game side of things. Here you're pretty much a little more geared out. Maybe 2500 to 3k combat power, probably trying to dip your toes into some tier 2 dungeons. On the topic of 2-star dungeons, let's go over one of the most important mechanics that I see newer players to these dungeons making, and that is the dodge roll mechanic. Missing this dodge takes a lot of damage from the boss, especially when you have very lower gear and you're not capable of taking many hits. It's very crucial that you pick up the dodge mechanics from earlier 1-star dungeons and get used to dodge rolling in the game. They will start to introduce newer mechanics for dodging where you no longer have to stay still, but your character has to be moving and perform a dodge roll, and a lot of players just aren't expecting this. A lot of this game comes down to patience. New dungeons like the 2-star start to release all the gear that was once expensive before. So have patience, and if you are thinking about buying something, check if there's a lithograph of the item first. Buying the non-lithograph version could definitely waste a lot of extra loot and you don't need to. Now that we're more into the late game, let's take a look back at the Maxroll website where we were looking at all of our gear, and let's take notes of things that could be used as temp items to fill our slots. For example, the Band of Universal Power is very hard to acquire. Therefore, you might be temporarily slotting it with something like a Violent Signet in my case. Same thing with the Belt of Bloodlust, very hard to acquire, and this would likely be temporarily slotted with something like a Butcher's Belt. Keep in mind kind of things that you can do like this and what is going to be your ultimate end game build. Some items are a lot harder to acquire. Likewise, some pieces of gear cost more lucent to gear up. So some accessories, the cloak, and the chest piece are a few examples of these. Next, we're going to be talking about Archbosses. These drop some of the best loot in the game, and they only spawn once a week, so they're very important. You're probably not going to get a lot of field practice, so it is highly, highly recommended to look at a guide on Maxroll or wherever and look at the boss mechanics so that you know what's up. For example, in Queen Bellendir, you are going to need this Queen Vellum neutralizer. Assuming that your Legion hasn't locked it, you should have been buying them. Another big thing is using Stellarite when you are at world bosses or arc bosses. And you can also stack 2 foods, an attack type food and a utility. So you should always be trying to stack something like the Scorpion Tail Fritters with another type of attack food. If you are full on fully leveling up your traits that cost the omnipotence to upgrade, and you have a bunch of these leftover omnipotence parchments left over in your inventory, you can actually dissolve those to the regular purple parchments, and those can be used to upgrade your regular skills. Diving into the PvP aspect really quick, because PvP is a very major integral part of this game. Make sure you come over to the Senior Sundries Crafter and you start making your precious purification stone. Ideally you want to have this upgraded. This is only used in PvP. It removes CC effects from you and it is an absolute necessity when you want to do PvP. And the final point I want to make, as you probably start trying to jump into PvP and all the late game content, is understand what your role is. Websites like Questlog or Maxroll can help you theory craft and help you understand what kind of role you should be taking. But it is very important for you to know your role in PvE and PvP. If you are a strong PvEer and putting on runes or things respective to you doing a lot of boss damage, or if you are a really strong PvPer, know what your role is and what you should be doing. I might make more guides in the future. I can definitely make one specifically towards my build, crossbow, dagger, scorpion. So if you guys want to see something like that, let me know in the comments down below and I'll definitely make a video. And that's the end of the video. I hope you guys all enjoyed the points I made. Feel free to leave me a comment below to let me know your thoughts. And likewise, I would really appreciate if you guys could hit the like button and please subscribe so I can get over 500 subscribers.